But with that, we head on to another concern. Speaking of the violence in Amazonia, we know since the start of its brutal occupation of Amazonia, La Republique has weaponized arbitrary arrest as a tool of control, intimidation, and subjugation. What began as isolated crackdowns has now become a normalized part of life under occupation, known locally as what is called Kalekale. In village after village, civilians are abducted without cause, often never to be seen again. Families are left in anguish, forced to either pay bribes, more like ransoms, for the release of their loved ones, or mourn in silence when they return as corpses, or not at all. Now, over time, this systematic abuse has become one of the most feared forms of state-sponsored violence, used not just to break the spirit of resistance, but to generate revenue through ransom-style extortion. It is not justice, it is organized terror. Today, yet again, Kalekale has struck the village of Mautu and Oweh, which have become the latest targets in La Republique's ongoing campaign of abduction and brutality. Dozens of innocent Amazonians have been taken from their homes in the early hours of the morning, another dark day in the calendar of a people under siege. In what is being described by eyewitnesses and human rights advocates as a mass abduction operation, French Cameroon colonial forces have stormed the villages of Mautu and Oweh in southern Cameroon's Amazonia, arresting scores of innocent civilians in a violent crackdown known locally as Kalekale. And according to local sources, heavily armed troops invaded residential communities at dawn, dragging young men and women from their homes without warrant or formal charges. The victims, many of whom are reportedly farmers, students, and local traders, they have been whisked away to unknown locations. According to a village elder said this is not an arrest operation, it is a coordinated kidnapping for ransom. A village elder from Mautu, who narrowly escaped the raid and is not new to such attacks, said they come under the guise of law enforcement, but what they really do is extort, torture, and in many cases, kill the peoples of Amazonia. Now, this disturbing event comes amidst growing concerns over systematic human rights abuses perpetrated by the colonial regime of La Republique du Cameroon, particularly in Amazonian territories, where the indigenous population has resisted assimilation and occupation for years now. Videos and images shared by survivors and activists show women wailing, homes ransacked, and terrified children watching as their fathers and older brothers are loaded onto military trucks. This wave of Kalekale is said to be among the most aggressive seen this year. Amazonian civil society groups, families of the abducted, the human rights defenders are calling on the international community to intervene immediately, to stop further atrocities and pressure the La Republique regime to release those detained. We are calling on all Amazonians at home and in the diaspora to rise in unity, a community spokesperson declared. These are our sons and daughters, brothers and sisters. If we do not speak out and act now, we risk losing more lives to this cruel occupation. Now, Kalekale, which is the mass arbitrary arrest, has become a notorious tactic used by La Republique forces to suppress dissent, intimidate locals, and extort money from poor families under the threat of prolonged detention or death. Victims are often tortured in detention, denied medical access, and only released after bribes, more like ransoms, are being paid. International observers and watchdog groups have repeatedly condemned these actions as violations of international humanitarian law. But La Republique authorities continue with impunity. The glaring question is, what can be done now? And to answer that, we see the immediate calls which are already being made for legal aid and local advocacy teams to locate and demand access to the detained. Amazonian humanitarian networks to also provide psychological, financial, and logistical support to the affected families. International human rights organizations to pressure La Republique and demand accountability. Peaceful mobilization, public protest, and diplomatic lobbying to expose these crimes and demand the release of all abducted persons. Well, these are the suggestions of the human rights activists in and around Amazonia. But then, We'll leave the story with a question one young woman from Oweh tearfully asked: how many more will be taken before the world listens? How many more?